So, Michael Nagler with the Meta Center, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm just, wow, your website is so full. And a few of my key words that I'm taking away are the exhilaration of nonviolence. I've never
Yeah,
thought of it that way.
yeah,
And, this liberation of the oppressed and the oppressor. And the new story of holding up the mirror, we talk about, I'm a coach, holding up the mirror with our clients,
mhm,
reflecting their perspectives, and then coming up with new perspectives. And this idea, though, of holding up the mirror to goodness and
yeah,
letting evil fade away with
yeah.
confidence. Wow, is that needed at this
Badly,
time?
yeah,
Yeah,
badly needed.
yeah.
That was actually directly from Bucky Fuller, Buckminster Fuller
Yes.
said, "What you do is you do not dismantle an evil, you build good, and in the
Mhm.
face of that good, the evil will almost dissolve." What we say, the meta center is a lot of it will dissolve, but then you will be able to wage a very effective resistance
Mhm.
against the remainder.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
is a general strategy that we recommend is to first think what can you do by way of constructing what you want. And this
Yes.
is Gandhi started talking about constructive program practically from the first moment that he was getting active in South Africa. He was
Mhm.
up against some really, really serious, what I guess I would call evils,
Yes.
racism and class oppression and so forth. But instead of tackling it head on, or rather alongside with tackling it head on, he also went back to his own community and
Mhm.
said, what can we build? How can we improve our lot without depending on another?
Yes. Yeah, that's
So,
such a great example. And I know you've really been inspired by Gandhi from
mhm,
reading your website and tuning into your nonviolence radio
yeah,
and so many of the rich resources that you offer. I've already downloaded and started using the
good.
nonviolence daily and the coloring and family books for the grandkids. So
Good.
just delighted to spend this time with you and invite you to share your definition of peace, how you got
Yeah.
started with this.
Yeah. Well, when I was still teaching at Berkeley and I started the Peace and Conflict Studies program, I
Yeah,
had to have a definition, of course.
sure.
And so the definition that I came up with would kind of line up with what you were asking, Marilyn, about the exhilaration.
Mm,
My definition is in any community, peace obtains when all the members of that community, or most of them, spontaneously desire one another's welfare.
mhm.
So that is the infrastructure, the emotional infrastructure from which you can make all the political arrangements necessary. And I think that, and in my own experience, I have found that when we overcome a feeling of disunity or hostility or competition against another, there's a release of positive energy and a feeling that of groundedness, a feeling that we're coming back home.
Yes.
That hostility was a disturbance,
Mhm, mhm,
and that when that disturbance is resolved, there's a new uprising of positive energy as we come back. Uh,
mhm,
it's a little bit kind of like a physical model of an electron
mhm. Yes.
finding its shell. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's where the exhilaration comes in. Now,
Or
there was
coming
a,
back into balance, I think, it's like a imbalance in the system and then
yeah,
coming back into balance. Yeah.
you can definitely think of it that way. There's
Mhm.
an episode that took place in the civil rights movement where this was in Birmingham, and marchers were going down to the City Hall to register,
Mhm.
and they were blocked by police and firemen, and they didn't know what to do. They hadn't prepared for that. Kind of spontaneously, they all got down on the sidewalk and prayed.
Mm.
And then, as they were praying, there's a direct quote from one of them: "We became spiritually intoxicated."
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
It
They,
is.
they got up off their knees, they walked right into that line of fire hoses.
Mm.
The sheriff was saying, open the hoses. The firemen reported literally that later that their hands were frozen on the nozzle. They could not do it.
Wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah. And the
Mhm.
marchers just walked right on through them,
Mhm.
saying, how do you feel about what you're doing? Stuff like that. No hostility, but
Mhm.
no fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. So
That's
that's when,
inspiring. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
I've been so inspired by that little episode. It's in a book by Stoughton Lind
Mhm.
called Nonviolence in America.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's where the exhilaration comes from. And that's where the confidence comes from. The
Mhm.
nonviolent actor, that he or she may be suffering, may be inconvenienced, may be risking arrest or worse. But to quote the words of another friend of mine who was in Central America when things were very violent there, as she said, I felt that we were going to be okay, not because God would be protecting us, but because we were where we were supposed to be, doing
Uh-huh.
what we were supposed to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's again, that's another dimension of this feeling, this
Yes.
groundedness, this return to balance that
Mhm.
we've been talking about. So the
Yeah.
rest of our work at Meta is unpacking that
Mhm.
and kind of doing a triage of every institution that we've built.
Yeah.
This one has to be completely eliminated, like
Mm.
the death penalty.
Mhm.
This one has to be reformed, like the electoral college
Mm.
and the educational system,
Mhm.
and then some of them are just fine.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
So what would you say to give that confidence or hope to the average person who is experiencing um, division, like the political division we have right now in the US, or some of the armed conflicts, some of the 150, we tend to focus on just two, but the 150 armed conflicts around the world at any given time.
yeah, well, don't think this isn't a question that we wrestle with right here
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Meta Center. I think there's a certain magic in what my students said about doing the right thing, being where we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
And many of the greatest wisdom teachers of humankind have said that really is all that you can do,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
therefore, really all that you are required to do.
Yeah.
There's a principle in law, which again, St. Augustine, who I like very much,
Yeah.
he quotes, it says, ultra quam possi nemo obligatur. In other words, no one can be required to do what they cannot do.
Yeah. Mhm.
So if we do what we can do and without focusing too much on the direct result that we
Mhm.
want to achieve, we will be making our best contribution, and we can be confident that it'll tell somewhere
Mhm.
in the system.
Yeah.
There's a formula that we developed, and it's in our book Search for a Nonviolent Future,
Mhm.
which is work versus work. You know,
Oh.
work, quote unquote, means it did what I wanted it to do.
Mhm.
But just
Mhm.
work without quotes means it did good work.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So, very often nonviolent actions are successful,
Mhm.
but sometimes they seem not to be successful. But to the extent that they are really nonviolent,
Mhm.
they are automatically successful. and that they have, liberated us from
Mhm,
hostility and had a good impact on the system.
mhm. That's a great perspective. Thank you.
Sure.
So, how are you inviting others to join you? I know you have the film out, you have
Yeah.
books, you've got the Nonviolence radio again. You've
Yeah.
got so much out there. Uh,
Yeah.
mhm,
And we teach courses from time to time
okay.
on various platforms. We're not doing one right now. We're sort of in between
Hmm.
courses. But because the pandemic is lifting, I think we may be able to reinstitute something that I used to like very much that we called our hope tank. You know,
Ooh,
it's like a think tank, but more
uh-huh.
hope.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah, we love that. We just would have some friends over to the office. We would meditate together, maybe make a breakfast together, and then just sit around,
Mhm,
bring up an issue if someone wanted to be the agenda for that day,
mhm,
or possibly not. And just the only ground rule was that everybody's contribution is valued,
mhm.
and that our main theme that orients everything is nonviolence.
Yeah.
And
I, I might have to institute that locally. I love this
yeah,
idea. I have a hope tank. Yes.
yeah, it started because talking to one of my students one day, and I said, I want to start a new think tank. And she
Mhm.
said, we don't need another think tank. We need a hope tank. So,
Oh, yeah. And I'd love to come to yours sometime.
hmm,
We get that
would be
going.
delighted to have you. Yeah, tap
Yeah.
into your expertise.
Thank you. Thanks. So you got inspired. You started when you were at Berkeley, and you're living it out so clearly in all the resources that you've developed. You're inviting others to join you. I know others are using your work as I'm doing interviews already. Your
Yeah.
name's coming up. Um, what what do you want the people who are listening to this or reading it to take away? What are some
Great
key
question,
points? Yeah.
Carolyn.
Mhm,
First of all, I want them to know that they have a sacred nature as human beings,
mhm,
and that sanctity, what the great Quaker founder George Fox used to call that of God in every man,
mhm.
that element inside of us is released, developed, put into practice through the techniques of nonviolence,
Mhm.
which
Mm.
can be learned and which are not taught in our formal educational institutions. So, yeah.
What would that take?
Oh boy,
Let's have that as a hope tank subject.
yeah. I think that there is some motion in that direction.
Mhm,
Marilyn, when I founded the Peace and Conflict Studies program at Berkeley, I think it was one of a very few, one of the
mhm,
very first. And now I think there's something like 290 programs around the country and Canada, North America,
mhm.
that are teaching some version of a peace studies program or at least a course. Now,
That's fabulous.
we kind of developed a long time ago, and I ran it past Marshall Rosenberg, and he liked it a lot. So
Yeah, yeah.
we developed kind of a 5 point program that I think each one of us can adopt. The first, and this more and more evidence is pouring out on this right now. The first is to avoid the mass media.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
are cultivating a violent image of the
Yes.
human being, which is
Mhm.
obscuring our true nature.
Uh-huh.
So be very, very careful about that stuff. Be very, very scrupulous.
I agree.
Good.
Yeah.
And then with the time that's freed up, learn about nonviolence, look at nonviolence websites, read the books.
Mhm.
There is now a database that's been collected at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania that lists over 1,100 cases of nonviolence that have taken place worldwide.
Wow.
And this is an unknown history.
Yeah.
So nonviolence has a history, a theory, and a future.
Yeah.
So that's point number two. And then uh, point number three is not sure I never remember all of them.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just thinking, what will it take for the media to pick up that? What would make that, history of
Yeah.
nonviolence be exhilarating for them to put it out there? It's so
When,
valuable.
when people pay for it, when people go to those media,
Yeah.
when if their screen shares and their uh,
Yeah.
their visits from people.
Yeah.
It's I remember a television producer was asked a long time ago when the first studies were coming out about how dangerous, how much violence is caused by violent media.
Uh-huh.
So they asked this fellow who was a very big player in the field, what is the thinking
Mhm.
behind your programming? He got quite indignant and he said there's no thinking whatsoever.
Hmm.
In other words, what people will watch, they will provide.
Yeah, that's telling, isn't it? And, another thing that I picked up is this we-ness that you talked about,
Mhm.
the community, our link as sacred beings, and this starting from within, the nonviolence, the peace starting within, and then going out to social action and restorative justice. I would be so excited about seeing that shift in our justice system.
Oh boy, wouldn't that make a big difference?
Yeah.
We have a schema called roadmap, which you
Mm.
may have seen on our
I
website.
think I missed that. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
put in just metacenter/roadmap. Is
Okay.
and it has, among other things, it has three concentric circles. The inner circle is that personal cultivation that we
Mhm.
were talking about. The second circle is uh, constructive actions that you engage in with your community.
Mhm.
And then the outer circle is confronting the remaining injustices that must
Mhm.
be undone in the wider community. So
Yeah.
it's not just one individual going out there protesting for a while and going home.
Mhm.
It's,
Right.
it's this deliberate concentric, centripetal employment of what we have developed within.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, point
And
three. Yeah, point three
yeah.
is have a spiritual practice.
Yes. Yes. Mhm. Yeah, and I do it, so it's been so helpful, and I've gone back to Tai Chi also,
Mhm.
just to have that. I have a centering practice
Good.
anyway, a centering prayer practice, but
Yeah.
to go back, into doing that in my body also has been helpful. Mhm.
Is that Richard Rohr's centering prayer that you do?
Yeah, yes, mhm,
Yeah, I am a meditator.
yeah, yeah. Well, similar, they're similar, yeah,
Also.
and similar results. Yeah, and I also appreciated we are not our feelings. Mhm.
Yeah, which advertising is trying to tell us that we are.
Yeah.
Feel good,
Mhm.
light up this or that, and you'll feel good.
Yeah.
Uh, no, we have to be very we have to have a lot of emotional intelligence
Mhm, mhm.
to be able to trust our feelings.
Yeah,
And in most cases, we don't have that intelligence yet.
yeah, and to look at others and realize they're not just whatever feeling they're caught up with in that moment also.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
extremely important because we tend to identify people with what they are coming at us with.
Mhm.
And the thing is, when we get some detachment from our own feelings and start
Mhm.
to draw closer to that sacred core of our nature,
Mhm.
we automatically recognize that the same is possible in the other.
Yes.
So instead of insulting them, quarreling with them, if we hold up that mirror to
Mhm.
reflect back to them the reality which they have forgotten
Yeah.
about their own self. And
Mhm.
you see these marvelous transformations happening
Mhm.
all the time. People, confronting policemen who they say, I just couldn't follow orders.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, those are inspiring stories.
Mhm.
And so the emotional intelligence, and then also I talk about cultural intelligence. So
Oh, yeah.
understanding what my cultural identities are, how people perceive me because of those, and then understanding yours, the people that I'm communicating or interacting with,
Mhm.
and and how I perceive those, and then watching for bias in myself as I consider those too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then having forgiven oneself, it's a relatively easy step to forgive others.
Yeah.
Quite
Yeah.
critical step.
Hmm. That's right. That's right. So any final message as we're wrapping up, Michael, I want to thank you again.
Oh, well, thank you, Marilyn, for giving me this opportunity. This is just what we enjoy so much doing at the Meta Center, is sharing nonviolence with other people. So please, feel free to visit our website and go on any of those resources, and we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks. And it's metacenter.org. Is that
Yeah,
the
and
website?
Meta has two T's.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
It's
Okay.
The Buddhist term, not the Greek term.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Marilyn. Again, thank you.